Before examining his role and that of the other Igbo leaders in the months prior to the coup of 15 January 1966, we should mention the triumphs which the Igbo had achieved, which triumphs emboldened their leaders to be undisguisedly contemptuous of the Northerners and threatened to behave like the camel in the Arab camel story. For as pointed out earlier, the coalition government of 1959 gave a grand opportunity to the Igbo to use federal government resources to entrench themselves in key positions and to intensify their education training. It was an opportunity which, listen, the Ibo National Caucus. Going forward, I'm going to mention in this group. Again, if you are Igbo, nobody hates you. But what you are going to hear that the Ibo National Caucus did in this country, it's demonic. Let's go back to the book now. Please remember that organization, Ibo National Caucus. Again, if you are Igbo, you may not have heard this group before. Just calm down. If anything I say, I will tell you the sources. Go and study it. I'm actually helping Igbo people. The truth is, you've been damaged. So when I read these things, you don't have to agree. When I was talking about Yoruba people too, I was in fact, I think I'm even lenient on you. With Yoruba, I was a bit harsher because we needed it. So I'm reading a book. I'll tell you the book. You can read it. You've not heard of this group before. Get the names, study it. I don't hate you. I'm helping you. I'm trying to deliver you from this victim mindset that you have been perpetually condemned to. It says here, it was an opportunity which the Ibo National Caucus, formed not long after the end of the Second World War, precisely in 1948, would not wish to miss. Its aim, this is the Ibo National Caucus's aim. Its aim was summarized in a moment of indiscretion by C.D. Onyeama in the famous utterance at the Island Club, Lagos, that the domination of Nigeria by the Igbo is only a question of time. Indeed, the caucus fixed 1964 as the target date, later changed to 1969 for, quote, our perpetual rule of the Federation. Where is this from? You can find it in the book called IUL Collections of the Nigerian Civil War. Please find that book. Don't curse me in the comment section. But if you curse me, if I don't worry, curse me. You will be cursed. But if you like, you just curse yourself. The point is that look for the IUL Collections on the Civil War, or look for this book, The Educated Elites in Nigerian Society, or look for Just Before Dawn. You'll find it there. Again, there was a plan. And that is the point that you guys don't like to hear. You will hear it. You go feel them. Here's the point. 1928, the first ethnic organization in Nigeria was created. It was Ibibio, not even Igbo. Other groups came up later. 31 was Urobo. Different other groups came. 36, the Igbo unions they started forming the Igbo unions in Calabar, in Lagos, in Port Harcourt. Right? 43, they changed the name to Igbo Federal Union to bring everybody together. 44, they hatched a plan. It was a 20-year plan. I did a video on it. I call it the Igbo 20-year plan for Nigeria, something like that. You find it on YouTube. They had a 20-year plan for the perpetual rule of the Federation. The group who had a plan to rule Nigeria perpetually is the one who calls you a tribalist and is a pan-Nigerian. 45. So 44 was when they created the plan. 20 years was supposed to culminate in them becoming the Ogakwakata forever in 1964. 1945 was when Charles Onyeama, one of them, made that statement in Island Club in Lagos when he said the Igbo domination of Nigeria is only a matter of time. He was essentially regurgitating what they had discussed in 44, but we did not know until a document came out in 64. That document is in this book, so I don't have to open it. It's another book actually, but I'm just going to read it from this one. The Ibo National Caucus, its aim was summarized in a moment of indiscretion by C.D. Onyeama in the famous utterance at the Island Club, Lagos, that the domination of Nigeria by the Ibo is only a question of time. Indeed, the caucus fixed 1964 as a target date, later changed to 1969, for our perpetual rule of the Federation. Many observers who watched with interest the establishment of the University of Nigeria, that's Nsukka, in 1960, at a time that the Igbo would not require the services of graduates of such a university, began to suspect that it was a masterly designed strategy to provide backward areas in northern Nigeria with Igbo personnel. You know, I played a video once where Peter Doche said that they like to travel everywhere and they stay there and they will succeed and thrive. They are thinking from somewhere. Listen, everybody travels. But again, no ethnic group travels anywhere in the world to help the people they are going to meet. Are we joking? It's a joke now. Nobody travels the world trying to... You are not a missionary. You are traveling for survival. You are relocating because you need to. Okay? But here's the crazy part. There was a plan that, well, a lot of people began to talk about in 1960, that it seems that... Okay, so number one, let's go back just a little bit. I said it before, if you notice, many of the leaders from the Southeast in the First Republic, many of them, if not all, were born outside the Eastern region. Most of them were born outside. Just think of any, whether it was in Rossi, or it was Azikiwe, or it was Ojuku, or it was Zogo. Most of them were born outside. So the idea of moving out of the region is a normal thing. You'll find some of those things in the book I talk about a lot. Ethnic Politics in Nigeria by Okudiba Noli, and Igbo 25 Years After the War by Joy Bokwe. So people always moved out. But here's the point. The Igbos, they come out. They were trying to fill a gap. Now, it wasn't, again, out of altruism, like, oh, the North is backward educationally, so we're going to have a lot of graduates to go there to help. No, they were going there to take over the region. In other words, they're going to become the new colonizers of the North. If you look at, I'm not going to go deep into it, I promise, but if you study the nationalization policy of the Sardauna, of the northern region, and also the interviews of the Sardauna, and you see him, for instance, the BBC interviewer the other time was asking him in 62. He said that he was obsessed about the Igbos. You don't understand. You may not get, like, why is this person obsessed? Like, using the words of the BBC reporter, why was he obsessed about the Igbos? Because they discovered the plants. That's why. To you, I mean, the first time I saw that interview, I thought, why would you hate a person like, why would you be pushing against a group? Are we not all one Nigeria? But if you really sit down and like, there's something there. And what you find there is a literal strategy to take over different parts of Nigeria. That's to tell you that Ojukwu was not the first person that did it. There was a plan by the intelligentsia, not the military, the civilians. Maybe they're trying to help their people, but you know what I think? I think what it really is a group that wanted to make up for lost time. When everybody built empires, there were no empires in some parts of Nigeria, so they thought Nigeria would be their own way of creating that. That's the explanation for all of this. I mean, that's one explanation. And that's why I always look for this thing, or want to have kings here, want to have kingdoms here. When everybody did it, you couldn't, or you didn't. So now you're trying to make up for, but time don't pass. But let's get back to the book. It says here, many observers who watched with interest the establishment of the University of Nigeria in 1960, at the time that the Igbo would not require the services of graduates of such a university, began to suspect that this was a masterly designed strategy to provide backward areas in northern Nigeria with Igbo personnel. This measure led the Yoruba rivals, who also needed no university, to found the University of Ife. I've said it before, for the most part, Yoruba people have plans, but if you act a certain way, they'll react. So if you create University of Nigeria and Nsukka, Yoruba people will not say you are wrong. They'll just create their own. The crazy part is that whenever they now create their own, you then hear the people who did the other thing are going to call you tribalist, because the idea is to deflect and to accuse you. And I've said this several times. Every accusation from the Southeast is a confession. It's not you, it's them. If you have issues, fix it too. But generally speaking, every accusation is a confession. It's not that you are wrong. He's telling you what he is. So listen to him. Not for yourself. Not to change, because you're not changing anything. You're just trying to understand him. However, the discovery of oil in commercial quantities and the creation of the Midwest states out of the former Western region began to make the Ibo leaders in the Eastern region say things which their northern partners felt extremely offensive and provocative. Mineral oil raised among the Ibo leaders the hope of inexhaustible resources with which a bold and dynamic social and economic program for the Eastern region could be conceived. The Premier of the Eastern region, Dr. Michael Okpara, began to threaten secession and began to argue that revenue be allocated according to the principle of derivation. The first time the Igbos threatened to secede was in 1963. There's a book I recommended last week. I'm going to mention the book again. It's called The Midwest Response to Biafran Invasion. It's by Oswanlele Oyilawa. Mentioned how they commissioned a study into the viability of a separate region in 1963. It was not about Ojukwu. That oil that what was her name? Chimamanda was saying was the reason Nigeria fought the Igbos. It was actually the reason why the Igbos fought the minorities. Listen, there are layers to this thing. And that's why you see the pushbacks from folks in Rivers State, particularly, and then you see in a way in Cross River and Akwa Ibom. There's a reason for that. What the Igbos did was, again, ethnic domination, right? It wasn't about the party, it was about ethnicity. And that's why they made sure that they were the ones in charge of NCNC, the party itself. So think about it for a second. Azikwe, we'll still read about that later. Azikwe was the president. So the first president was Abat Macaulay. The party was established in Yoruba land. Azikwe comes along, becomes the secretary. He was secretary, but he becomes the president after Abat Macaulay. When he was leaving, there was supposed to be a Yoruba man that would take over. It was the vice president, Father Onsi. But they made sure that they put another Igbo man, ensuring that, by the way, moving the headquarters, so to speak, of the party to Enugu and Igbolizing everything. Then make sure that the region head in the Eastern region was Igbo, and then ensure that the one in the Midwest was also Igbo, even though Igbos were the minorities in the Midwest. And at that time, you had 4 regions. Igbos were controlling 2. Osadebe in the Midwest, Okpara in the East. It wasn't about party, it was about ethnicity. But the cool thing about, or the funny thing about the way Nigeria works is that the person who is using that ethnicity the most is the one who puts on a facade of, hey, we like Nigeria, we're all over the place. The control of the Midwest government by the Igbo premier, Dennis Osadebe, only served to embolden the Igbo leadership that the time had arrived to call off the bluff of the northern region. The census of 1963, the implication of accepting such figures they saw was that the North would be able to control the federal government with a simple majority, should the Northerners so decide, and there was no incontrovertible evidence that the Northerners could not decide to so use their position, now that the Southerners were proving ungrateful. In the circumstances, both the Igbo and the Hausa Fulani leadership had to be involved in a trial of strength. The stage for embattlement was neither the North nor the East, but the West. Here, the Yoruba in the action group unleashed towards themselves intra-ethnic hostility of the worst type. On the platform of tribal chauvinism, the faction led by Chief Esel Akintola succeeded in persuading a section of the Yoruba NCNC to see the writing on the wall that the Ibo were seeking to dominate the country against the interests of the Yoruba, and by the way in which Okpara had been made to bid to succeed to the leadership of the party, thus superseding Chief J.O. Fadaunsi, a national vice president, and the way the Ibo went on throwing their dominance in the face of the Yoruba in the federal universities, in corporations, airways, railway, Nigerian Ports Authority, many loyal NCNC began to demand an end to Ibolization of the party. Again, please watch the video on YouTube, Busiri Ori's YouTube channel, Achebe, Meritocracy or Nepotism.